Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friend. And if you're new to our show, welcome home. This is where you get the best advice on how to make the transition from being a corporate leader to starting your own coaching or consulting practice. And today I'm very excited to share two guests with you. This is our first time we have hosted two guests at the same time on this show. So super excited for this conversation. We have with us Christa Grasso and Kim Woods. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Christa and Kim.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
What is this new era? What does it mean? And what does it mean for us as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so we can determine just by looking at trends and how we feel that things aren't working the way they used to, right? Like,
You're kidding.
Right? I know. So shocker, right? Like big shocker. But literally all we have to do is read about stress or read about the trends in exhaustion or look at how many businesses fail to determine, you know what, we've been doing it wrong. Like it hasn't been working. So why are we going to continue to do it the same way? So at the same time we're realizing this, the earth, the universe, whatever we want to say, the energies are literally heralding a shift. It started at the top of 2020. Think about 2020, everybody, right? Hello, like, yes to the difference, right? By the time we got to the end of that year, the stars had said, we're doing this a whole new, different way. And so it's going to be based on, which we can all be so excited about, a different type of energy. We're going to be leaning more into that intuitive, that more soul-led, the heart comes back in. It's a feeling. It's an instinct. It's a hit. It's allowing us to put ourselves at the center. Deborah, I love how you talked about the identity of a person and how that shifts. I don't know that we've spent a lot of time on that, or certainly not enough. And that makes the messy middle too messy. And so when we put ourselves in the center, we recognize that we have our own intuitive knowing, we have our own energy, we have our own cycles, our own rhythms. We start there and we build out from that. And it's a difference between success and failure.
I love that. And what occurred to me is it's going to work. Your intuitive soul-led process is going to work whether you pay attention to it or not.
Exactly.
Right? Just to give a quick example here, I had a feeling at the end of last year that there was a program that I was running that I wasn't sure if I really wanted to continue running it. Well, guess what? The people who are in that program weren't sure that they wanted to still be a part of that program. So, I mean, you either get in touch with it or you don't, but either way, it's going to play itself out. Is that true, Kim?
Absolutely. And it's becoming more and more than that. Like, so as each year goes on, it's going to be like shifting the dial until we get, 5 years from now, and it's only going to be intuitively led. Not that we're not going to have practicality. Of course, our minds matter, what we do matter, but that if we ignore intuition, it's going to start screaming at us. Like it's going to become a shrill every single time. So the good news is we're going to need to follow it because it's going to lead us down the right path. The not so good news is right now we're not used to it. Everything feels backwards. Everything feels inside out. It feels upside down. And so for us to find our footing is really critical, especially this year. This year is fiery. I don't really want to say
fiery. So how do we find our footing?
All right. So when I think about practically how you grow a business, how you scale a business, how you take this beautiful idea that you have and turn it into something real that's going to have the type of impact you want and make the type of profit that you want. To me, the most critical piece of all of it that fits so much into what we're both of you have been talking about so far is the strategy piece. I look at it as 5 different facets. There's your strategy, your planning, your systems, your team, and your insight. And at the end of the day, you can hire as many people as you want. You can put as many systems in place as you want. You can do whatever you want in the business. But if you don't have that alignment with where you want to go from a vision perspective and with what's right for you, you're not going to end up on the right path. Things are going to feel really complex, really drowning. You're going to get disconnected from the business. This is where a lot of people are in periods of reinvention because they've done a lot of musts and shoulds and isn't this the way I have to do it? And all of a sudden they're recognizing no, I didn't have to do it that way. And that way actually doesn't feel at all in alignment for what I want or the type of impact that I want. So to me, it comes down to practically, you do need to put the systems and structures and support in place to be able to get where you want to go in your business. But it all starts with that clarity of vision and what that looks like for you so that you're doing things in that really simple and really aligned way.
Yeah. And you have an acronym for that.
I do. I call it SPSTI. For some reason, it always makes
SPSCI.
me think of Stone Temple Pilots for any of you who are old enough to remember them. But it's SPSTI, Strategy, Planning, Systems, Team, and Insight. And the shortened version, what I really call that is the Lean Scaling System. But ultimately, I feel like we want this ecosystem in our business that addresses all the key facets of the structure and foundation that we need, but that is based in that alignment and that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for early stage entrepreneurs, they skip the P. They've got a strategy, but no plan. And then for later stage entrepreneurs, they got the plan, but no systems, and
Right.
so it's very interesting that we have different challenges as we go along the way. And this whole place of the messy middle is a place that no one talks about. Like
Mhm.
there's lots of rooms for people, women in particular, who have achieve 7 figures of revenue and they're scaling to 8. There's plenty of rooms for those who want to get over the hump to 6 figures. But those of us in the messy middle are ignored and kind of like fumbling in the dark. And one of the things that has been like knocking at my head for 2 days is I hate marketing language. And it's because I'm in a campaign right now and I'm writing these emails and I'm like, I hate this formula. Like, I want to blow up this entire formula of how you get people to sign up for things. And so more on that. But it's just that, like, this is the stuff, this is the intuitive stuff that's going on in your head that maybe you're not paying attention to, that's really guiding you to your next and helping you stand out in a different way.
I'm going to tell you that if you're not fully aligned with your own energy, then no matter what you do, I don't care. I have hired so many people from the marketing lens that we could talk forever about
Oh
marketing.
my God.
And I've realized I'm really terrible at it. Like I'm really good at sales and I'm really good at that invitation, but that whole middle piece, the messy middle marketing piece for me is just not great. And so the more I align with who I truly am and the more I go deeply and richly into what I do for people, and I tell the story of that, and I show up in conversations like this, that's what I find for more and more people is working. Because think about it, every 12 seconds, there's 400 things you can read online.
Yeah.
How do you get above or below the noise, right? Well, it's that passion, it's that enthusiasm, it's those results. We're sitting here with 3 intuitive visionaries, by the way, ladies. I just wanted to say that, right? So for us, we can dream big. We can see that vision. We can know the potential. We can formulate the whole thing, but communicating it for us feels boring. It feels like we just want to keep leaping forward. So for us to take 1 stitch up, 2 stitches back, 1 stitch up, 2 stitches back works best for the 3 of us in this room.
Amazing. So let's talk about being in alignment. And Kim, I know you have an assessment you can take that gives you a particular profile. How does that work and how does that play into how you operate as a business owner?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is that, I wanted to be able to deliver to more than my high-end clients who I lusciously love, but I walk into the stars the minute they're born. I channel the voice of their soul. I'm going to give you all the answers that you need. How could I replicate this? So it was, 5 years and 5 minutes in the making. It was one of those things that I was churning and talk about messy middle. There was no middle. And then finally it landed and all of a sudden it was like, oh, I can answer this question for people by assessing whether they enter a situation with their mind or whether they do it with connection with people or whether they do it with either action or inaction. And so I developed a 12-question quiz, which over 23,000 people have taken now, which is just
Oh my
amazing.
God, that
I
is
know.
amazing.
It's been written up in Forbes. I've gotten awards for it. So this is legit. This is all I'm doing is legitimizing it. And so you can go to your starmaptosuccess.com. You can answer these 12 questions, and it's going to give you one of 6 signatures. And again, it's assessing how you come into situations. Because think about the messy middle. Those are where when the situation is amplified, right? So we're going to be reacting more. We're going to feel stress filled. So knowing for us, like, ooh, we just talked about intuitive visionaries for a hot minute, but what about talking to wise strategists? Wise strategist approach is completely different. And I'll just keep the lens on marketing just for a moment. A wise strategist typically stands in the same place and wants to talk about their expertise, but they like to talk about what, and they like to give facts and figures. So for them, that's great because they'll attract their people, their own people, but you don't want just a bunch of wise strategists, right? Like we don't want a bunch of intuitive visionaries. We want the mix. So for wise strategists to be on panels, to be in discussions like a podcast just like this, for those longer discussions are the best things for them. I don't want to say they never want to do a 30-second reel, but if they do a 30-second reel, it's not going to really work out for them, which 30-second reels are great for us, intuitive visionaries.
Amazing. All right. How do we implement all this? And, what does it mean for the energies that are happening from the astrological perspective, the profiles of how we show up in the world, and scaling a business? Like, connect the threads, Christa.
Absolutely. So I mentioned SPSCI, Strategy Planning Systems Team Insight. So if we think really practically about what this looks like, we get clear for us what that vision looks like. We get clear on the impact we want to make. We get clear on the type of profit that we want to generate so we can live that rich, fulfilled life that feels in alignment for us. So we have clarity, right? First place to start, amazing. Now, how do we actually get there? And the answer is the same regardless of what stage of business that you're at, is you have to have some form of path forward. And this is where I think of something called structured flow. This is what I call it. Every business, I'm sorry to say this for all of you out there who love to wing things, but you do actually need a plan. The challenge is when people hear the word plan, especially coming out of corporate, they tend to think of these big, huge, time-intensive things that everybody pours all this time into and then never looks at again. And they're saying, there's no way I'm doing that. I'm not doing it. I'm going to trust what I know and I'm going to move things forward. But you do need a plan and you do need something to move towards, or you're not going to get there in the most simple, streamlined way. And so to me, it's that balance of structure and flow. There's periods in our business where we have a lot of clarity. We know exactly what we want this year to look like. And so we can be a little bit more structured because we know where we need to go. Other times it's much more of a flow state. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm not quite sure. I know that this is the next thing I want to achieve, but I have no idea beyond that because it's super dependent on how well that goes. That's more of a state of flow. But either way, you do need a plan and clarity on who does what, whether it's just you or whether it's you in a team, to be able to move things forward so you're seeing real results in your business.
Yeah.
Once you get to that point, you have results. You're able to repeat them. The business is growing. Amazing. Well, the side effect of growth is complexity, right? Growth feels amazing on one hand and it feels drowning on the other hand because you're like, it's working. And then you're like, oh my God, it's working. What am I going to do? How am I going to deliver all of this? Did somebody get that email? How do we, and you end up in this place of almost not knowing what's happening because there's so many moving parts. And that's the point in time in your business where you have to have the right systems in place. You have to really be focused on your structures because you're going to end up with a poor client experience and not being able to retain the clients you work so hard to get without it. And so things ebb and flow based on where you're at. But if you've got that vision, the next thing is, what does the plan look like to get to at least the next big milestone? And then what support and structure do you need around you so that it's not as chaotic and it's something that's sustainable, that doesn't cause you working 24/7.
Okay. So I want to this is real time. Everybody out there, I am going through this right now. This is what structured flow looks like in the energetics. So I have beautifully developed a great relationship with my intuition and my soul. And so when flow for me looks like this, in the middle of December, I said, I don't have any opportunities that involve guest podcasting or writing articles or what have you, right? And so I would love more speaking opportunities is basically it. So the minute I put that out there to the universe, I get between 35 and 57, which in May I did this, I got 35 in a week. And in December I did this, I got 57 in 1 week. Because when you're aligned and in the flow, you just put the quote unquote call out there. I didn't even literally have to get in touch with anybody. It just all came in. If you're not there, you're going to start putting some calls out. You're going to get some people to come in. It's going to be great. But to Christa's point, in corporate, we've all lived there. It would take 62 months to then be able to figure out what to do with these, and then no one would ever do them. That would be terrible. But for me, the plan looks like this. Literally gathering, like, holy crap, I've got all these opportunities coming in. Let's get my system in place. So between my admin and I, we literally just put the list together. Now that's too many if you do it all at once. But if I then now put it on a timeline, that's one thing to do for a plan. The second thing to do for a plan, how can I weave these together? Are there batching that I can do? Are there like things that I can do? And how do I then lead that to be something that can be converting for me so I can bring people closer into my world? So the plan is as simple as sitting with pen and paper and just designing it out. It took me literally an hour to figure this out. It all came together, and now getting to that systems place, now I'm literally going to my team. I've got a few strategists, of which Christa is one. I'm going to be perfectly clear. She's an amazing strategist for scaling. And then I've got my admin, I've got my tech, I've got SEO, and all I've had to do was just go to 3 meetings and just put this together, and we have a plan in place so I can execute it. It's that simple, and it's that complexity that you can dial in really quickly. But if I didn't have a plan, I'd be running around like a lunatic and nothing would materialize. I'd have all these opportunities, but they wouldn't actually convert.
Yeah, exactly. We do the same thing with our clients too. We do a 90-day plan. It's really a visibility strategy. Where are you speaking? Where are you on stages? What's your offer? How confident are you in transitioning from teaching and sharing to making an offer? And, let's close the sales. It's like 3, 2, 1, go, repeat.
Perfect.
It's super simple. But it gets more complex, Christa, as you start to grow, right? So that'll get you to your first 6 figures. It won't get you to 7. So when you say systems, processes, team, put together, is there a particular order that people go through, or is it dependent on where you are in your journey or what type of business you are? I'm just curious.
Yes to all of the above. And so
Okay.
what I mean by that is, at a macro level, if you think about it, strategy, planning, systems, team, and insight, you're never done with one of them. You're always continuously dialing them, and different ones have different focuses at different stages of your business, right? But every time you break through a new milestone, so you've gone through 6 figures or multi 6 figures and you're trying to get to 7, you are squarely living messy middle life right now, right? It's typically right then and there, your key focus is on 2 things. It's your systems and your team. There's too much on you at that point, and you've got to get yourself out of the day-to-day so that you can do what you do best, which will allow you to continue to scale the business and actually get to 7 figures and beyond. So you have to get dependency on you minimized. And you do that through having the right team, but also having the right systems. This is also a place where you need to have a focus on simplicity. I always say you want to simplify to scale. The last thing on earth you want to do is scale noise and complexity and all of the things. So usually when you're breaking through that multi 6-figure mark, your focus is on simplicity, and simplicity passes through systems and team. When you're earlier on, it's more vision and planning, because you're trying to just keep refining the vision and keep repeating the plan and what you're doing until you can get to that point of growth. But at the same time, as things start working, right, systems are to repeat positive results. So you can develop systems at any stage of your business. The only point in time when they're not super valuable is when you're purely in a figure it out place. So by the time you've developed the system, it's different. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Once you have something that you want to repeat and you want those repeat results from, that's where you want to start to systematize it. And I'm a big believer in systematize as you do. Don't make it a project. It's not a project to develop your systems. Develop them as you go, and you will be super grateful that you did, especially if you do it before you hit the messy middle of rapid growth. But yeah, so it kind of ebbs and flows, and different businesses are different. But having a team is a big driver of systems. because a team without systems means a whole lot of people that you're paying to make up a whole lot of stuff, which causes more noise and actually more time and more work for you. A systematized business with the right team gives you actual freedom.
Give us an example of creating a system and having someone on the team manage it. And I know you've talked about people who are strategic executioners as the first target. So if you could bring in that as well.
Yeah, so I see 4 different stages of business. At the top is vision, which is all you. Beneath that is strategy, and that's how you're going to make your vision a reality across the different facets of your business. Then you've got execution, the people that are rolling up their sleeves and getting work done. Where the real magic comes is that strategic execution tier. And that's the person who can be the bridge between the strategy and the execution, who understands how to get things done and build the actionable plan and do it. And so to give you an example, I'll share in my business, I brought somebody in for social media. I think most of us, one of our first hires is somebody who can do social media because it's not usually something that we love to do or it's super time consuming. And so it's very different bringing a social media person in at execution where all they're doing is scheduling posts and doing things, but you have to feed them all the content, everything to do, check everything, review everything, approve everything. It's almost just as much work for you. But when you bring someone in at strategic execution, which is what I've done, I have a very clear system in place for how we develop content, what our message is going to be. We're clear for the entire year, what we're promoting, when, what we're doing. And we have our brand isms, as in here's kind of how we approach things. Here's how we leverage each of the platforms. Here's how we repurpose core pieces of content. And so we have a whole content marketing system in place that the social media strategist can then take, and she can go off and implement without me having to be involved in everything. So I set the strategy, I create some reels and some videos and some of all that stuff that we all love to do just so much, and send it over to her. And she's able to really autonomously on her own go off and implement and do. And it's because of the full system that we have in place around it that gives her kind of barriers and guidelines with enough creative control to go and do it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interject too to just say, when you're in alignment with your own energy, 2 things will happen. One is you know how to delegate, and 2 is you know how to hire. And so you should have gone higher first, right? But when we're not in alignment with what it is we exactly need and what we are able to do, we're going to underhire most likely. And this is why most people drop into that immediate, I'm going to just hire a VA. The person's going to need massive amount of care and feeding, but I'm not thinking about that because I just feel really good about hiring somebody. But when we are in alignment with our own power, we know what our gifts are. We understand how much incredible impact we make, and we are confident and committed to who we are. We then hire somebody that's in our, shoulder to shoulder with us, if you will, like that right-hand person, that left-hand person, that strategically operating person that can execute without you having to do all of the communication and all of the documentation of all the procedures in the world, so that the person never has to be able to, they don't ask so many questions, right? So I always look at the care and feeding of you first. I might be going on a limb here, and I'm fine with that. But I usually say to solopreneurs, your first hire should be an executive administrator. Now, it could be an executive administrator that handles this is what I did. My internal, I have very high end, bougie offer. I work beautifully with one-on-one clients. I have a high niche boutique, small group program. And so the onboarding process, the ushering process, the care and feeding of my clients is significantly important to me. And the care and feeding of me is significantly important to me because I want you to have a bougie experience, right? So it's really luscious. So she takes care of all of that. I got to tell you, I mean, sometimes I'm like saluting her like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, oh, geez, I don't want to put this on my calendar because she's going to give me the eyebrow and she's going to look at me and she's going to be, no, you're not doing that. because I need somebody to be able to bounce things off of, so that as an intuitive visionary, I like all the ideas in all the world and I want to say yes to everything. and she helps me to say no, right? So that's just one example. If a different example, if it's an online business manager that you want to hire, like Christa was just talking about, which is beautiful, then that person is going to say no to you too on sometimes, where if you say, hey, I want to launch these 14 things this week, that person should say, no, that's not a good idea. Right? Because
Mhm.
we get so in our flow and in our heads sometimes about all the opportunities that we can manifest, especially when we're in alignment. And yet the audience, your people need to be able to digest this. And so having that reasonability factor on the other end is super helpful.
Yeah. And to not get stuck in your head, so sometimes I feel like the best things I've ever created, there was like no gap between the intuitive hit and the execution,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you stop and you pause and you start to debate it and you start to socialize it with other people and what do you think and should I do this? We launched a community in December that had been on my mind for like a year. And it took me meeting the founder of the platform we used, which was Mighty Network. So I met Gina Bianchini at an event, and she was talking about the value of community. And then suddenly I saw it. I saw the strategic vision that that I wanted to be able to exit and create something of value that I could eventually sell or give to someone else to run. And once that hit, it was like 2 months to market. And, something that had been just like an idea that I resisted for a year. So I think, when you're not in alignment, you can get the hit, but you're not going to take action on it because your mind's going to get in the way. And when you are in alignment, there's no pause, there's no gap between the action. So that's number one. Number two, completely agree. I mean, I have 2 people on my team right now, and I've made some bad hiring decisions, I admit. So I've gone for the strategist who wasn't the executioner on my marketing. And, then you've got someone who's always asking you to hire somebody else for help. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Or saying I'm overwhelmed and it's so much to do. It's like, wait a minute. I had that job before I gave it to you. I know exactly how much time it takes to do it when you know how to do it well. So I think that strategic executioner is so important. We have an online business manager on my team. She's been with us for 5.5 years. I can't do life without her. When we do retreats together, I cry when I thank her because she is such an important part. And all of my clients know her. She does the onboarding experience. So it's so super important to hire the right people on your team, not the cheap people.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hire a team, it's not about getting the lowest cost, offshore option. It's about getting someone who can stand by your side and say yes and no and do that. So thank you. I just wanted to reinforce that. So let's talk about building the bridge between where we are today and the vision that we have. The path forward is not always clear. And I will admit it's not always clear to me either. I've got a vision. I guess that's why I'm an intuitive visionary. I got the vision, but like the plan and the systems and like how to get there in the shortest way possible. I think the other piece of this is what is the shortest distance between these 2 points with the least amount of pain and the most amount of pleasure.
Okay. So here's where when you are, and I don't want to overuse this word, but when you are aligned, when you are so completely certain, let's start there. When your mind is certain, you have that vision, you got that clarity, that's really great. But that clarity doesn't mean it's actually in existence yet, right? Like it's like, oh, I want to have a community. So you just said that, right? I want to have a community, but you didn't know how, you didn't know when, you didn't know what it was going to look like or whatever. But when you are saying yes, that full body yes to something, that's when the flow comes in. That's when you meet that person. That's when you're open. That's when you're like, oh, the possibility is here. I'm open to it. And then things start coming in. You still have to keep saying yes. So this is what happens. It's like we say that initial yes, and then you said it perfectly. We get into our heads, and then we think of all the reasons why we say no. So I call that yes, but. Are you saying an actual yes, or are you saying yes, but? Because if you're saying yes, but, then you're going to think of the time, the money, the resource. You're going to think of all the reasons why it's just not actually going to work, right? So when you look at the strategy, here we are at the top of the year. When we look at our strategy, we shouldn't have more than 5 things And I'm talking like 5 big nuggets, right? I want to write a book. I want to launch a podcast. I'm making this up. I want to have a community, and I want to have 13 more clients. I just made up all those, right? So these are my 5 big buckets. When you then actually take some time and space and give yourself some grace around, okay, what would it actually take to do that book? What would it actually take to do that community? And then I'm going to lob it to Christa, because I've just created that space for it. I've just aligned your energy with it. I've said yes to it in big ways. And now the flow comes in, and now we need the structure.
And that right there is the key. And thank you, Kim, for kind of kicking that off and going through it, because what you said is exactly the way you get started. And what I think is really a risk when you're a solopreneur, especially, is if you're trying to do all of the pieces yourself, when you probably are really great at maybe the vision and the ideation, but maybe the implementation and the systems and the steps are not your superpower. Right. And that's where having that right person come in to help you, whether it's somebody who can advise or whether it's ideally somebody who can come into the team in that strategic execution capacity and who can understand your vision and say, I got this, I got you. Like, and they're asking you the right questions to get at what you said, right? How do you take it and break it down? So you've got these 5 big buckets. Amazing. How do you break that down then into more manageable pieces? How do you take those pieces and plug them into a 90-day plan so that things are moving forward? And the one thing that I want to say is most of us think, even those of us who have been in business as long as I have, which is 30 something years now, that when we have this new idea, it's going to somehow be a straight line. We are just going to get there. Literally, I'm on my 8th business. I have launched who knows how many products, and still I teach people all the time it's not a straight line, but I convince myself I've been doing this for so long, this is just going to like happen like magic, right? It does not work that way. So I think we need to understand that we can have the vision, but there is no straight path to it. And so the best thing you can do is don't try to find the perfect plan or the perfect path. Just get going. What is the next best thing that you can do to get going? And how do you measure how that worked? The measure could be a number measure. It could be a how I feel measure. It could be ooh, I do not want to do that long term. That sounded like a good idea. That is not what I want to keep doing. Yeah. Right. But you want to be taking that next path forward and constantly adapting and adjusting and making sure that you are moving towards the vision and not moving away from it because you're distracted by something somebody told you that you needed to do. That is where I see things get complex, and you do not end up on the shortest, simplest, most streamlined way to get there is when you allow yourself to get distracted by other people's musts and shoulds. And are you on this network? But you have to do it this way. And how come you're not? Right. And so it's those sorts of things that you want to ignore. But I'd say get yourself support. Ideally, if you're in a place to hire, make sure you've got someone in that strategic execution role, not someone who's purely at an execution role, because that's more work for you. You want someone who can take it, understands where you're going, and who can make it happen. Or if nothing else, at least get an advisor of someone who has that superpower and thinks that way to help guide you so you have clarity on what to do. And don't aim for perfection, just aim for progress and get going, but make sure you're measuring to know what's working so you can let go of the things that aren't as quick as possible and clear the way for the things that are.
Let's talk about measuring.
Yeah, I'm gonna interject too just a little bit to talk about the signature, because if you do take the quiz and you get the signature, I'm just gonna give you the information right now that you need for like who your best hire is, right? So for a wise strategist, your best hire is somebody who can ideate, is somebody who can actually brainstorm with you, because a lot of times you convince yourself something won't work. For an intuitive visionary, it's the opposite. It's somebody to hold your feet to the timeline, because intuitive visionaries, we have those big ideas, but we don't think through all the things that are going to be required to execute them. So we say yes, often too much. If you're a collaborative explorer, you want to be thinking about community. You like being part of a team. So having that team member that's more peer-to-peer to you, that strategic ops person, that right-hand person, is perfect for you. Ruling warrior, you do not like to explain things to anybody. I adore you, but you're a bottom line person. Hire that strategic op person, that fire and forget missile, and you'll be great. For the creative superstar, you will often be the first one to be coming to what are other people doing. That's your kryptonite. So you're going to be like, oh, Deb just said Mighty Networks. I should just go off and do Mighty Networks. Or Christa just said, she didn't say this, but I'm just going to make this up. She just said Circle, and so all of a sudden, creative superstar is paralyzed because overwhelmed by things. So for the creative superstar, for you to have a great strategist and someone who's with you that you can ask questions to throughout the month is really good for you. And for you, loving alchemist, small, intimate, deep containers are the best for you. So if somebody is telling you you need to be on this big, huge stage and do all these things with like 1,000 people, that's not the right thing for you. So you can handle working with any type of person. You're fine with that, but recognize that those small, intimate places are better. So for you to have the smallest teams and the most systems is excellent for you.
A quick question, Kim. Does it make sense for us to have our team members take that assessment as well? Oh,
Yes,
interesting.
absolutely. Yeah. So Christa and I, we've developed so many like answers about the simplify to scale method with these signatures. And for most of my clients, they have their team members, even some of their high-end clients, take the quiz so that they know how to address the issues with their people. Even if they don't know, like I'm an astrologer, I can walk through your stars, like I can know all the things. But this is where outside the audience, or for lots of other people, this is why I developed this so that we could all know. Gee, we have a collaborative explorer. They love to bounce ideas off of people. They need co-working sessions. Excellent. Knowing that is critical.
Amazing. This is so cool. I've got a ton of ideas, of course, of where I want to bring you into my circles. So now I need to go back to the question I asked Christa. What are we measuring?
So I'll start this and then I'll kick it over to you, Kim. One of the things when people hear metrics is a lot of times people think of your qualitative metrics, your numbers, your progress. And I think those are important, but are quantitative. In addition, I think you want your qualitative metrics as well. So one that I measure that is really, really important is reliance on heroics. What is the percent that you are relying on heroics? I will tell you, in the periods in my business where I've come close to or have actually burned myself out, it was a very high reliance on heroics. If it's just you in your business, you are the hero all day, every day. If you have a team and you do not yet know how to delegate, as Kim mentioned earlier, you're probably swooping in and playing superhero and fixing a lot of stuff. And so heroics is one of those qualitative measures that I think is really good to look at as the leader of your business, to say, how often am I playing the hero and do I need to? Because when you can look at that, it's hard to say, how well do I delegate? Well, like nobody wants to judge themselves. I delegate just fine, right? But if you're actually constantly having to come in and save the day, maybe you're not actually training people in a way where they're able to go off and do something, or maybe they're not empowered to go off and do it in the way they need to, and you create situations for it. So I always look at those qualitative ones as well. How fulfilled is this work for me right now? Right? That is another big one. Usually when we start to get low on the fulfillment measure, it's time for us to do some reinvention or reimagining of what we're doing. And maybe it's how we're delivering it or our role in it, but there's changes that are needed. So I think it's important from a metrics perspective. Yes, you want to have KPIs, key performance indicators. You want to know, like, what's my revenue targets? How am I progressing towards that? You can look back to see how you're doing, but there's certain measures you can do to look forwards and see what your conversions might be. All of that is important, but I think you also need the qualitative measures in there, because otherwise you can get too focused on hitting the goal, but ending up really misaligned in the process.
Yeah, and exhausted and overspent. And, when you were talking before, I was thinking of the number one superpower of entrepreneurs is the ability to say no and, to just stay focused on what matters. And the metrics are key, both the key performance indicators, or the critical success indicators, the forward looking, the leading versus lagging is what I'm trying to say. Awesome. Before we go, Kim, want you to give us a sense of what to expect this year from an astrological perspective. The 2-minute or 3-minute astrology forecast for how we are to show up and what to expect, and what do we do when we hit those hurdles. And then I want to toss it back to you, Christa, to close us out on the final word. So Kim, go.
Okay, so here we are. It's a very fiery year. It is going to be filled with chaos and overwhelm. Yay! Okay, here we are. First quarter is our mind wants us to be forward and making things happen and have lots of quick hits. This quarter isn't that. So the first quarter, the way we like to think of strategy is, oh, I'm going to get all these targets. I have my plan together. I'm ready to go. Yes, but no. This is a great time to winnow things down, to optimize, to fine tune, to really get deep on carving out those paths that you want to be true for you. So simplify to scale, as you know, as Christa will say, right? So we get into Q2, we're opening up, it's like almost opening up the valve here. It's going to feel, it's a big awakening on March 30th. It's going to feel surprising in some ways. We're going to have some epiphanies. We're going to have some realizations. And so leave yourself some time and space in Q2 to be able to do that further. I call it like walking on the cobblestones, like make sure your footing is sure and make sure that this is exactly the trajectory you want to go in. Because the minute we hit June, June is beyond imagining for possibility. The minute we hit July, the second half of the year, we are going to be like on a G-force luge. Things are going to be moving so fast. Innovation, solutions, ideas, creations, connections, everything is going to start coming in. And if we don't have big containers or big places to put all these opportunities, we're just going to miss them. And 2026 is filled with even more opportunities. So I am getting all of my clients and anybody who will listen to me ready to say, are you on terra firma right now? How is your foundation? Because take this time to really set it up. You first, your fulfillment, your satisfaction, your definition of success, align with you and your energy, put these things in place, and then watch it just come to be in the second half.
Amazing. Christa, how do we prepare for all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I consider everything that Kim just said, if I think about this in steps that you're taking, we all know that the buying journey has elongated, right? We saw a lot of that last year. Things are moving slower. So what I want everyone to keep in mind is maybe June is when you start to really see that momentum building, but that momentum is built on top of what you're doing today. So you need to be preparing yourself for scalable growth, whether you're in a place of growth or whether you're in a place of scale. Either way, you want something that can be scalable. That means get really, really clear. Take this time if you do not already have clarity of vision. Get clear on where you want to go, and then get clear on what the big things are that you want to do in this first quarter of the year and in the next quarter in order to get yourself there, and make sure that you are putting yourself, your message, your presence out into the world, because then you are ready for the growth that will be coming. And that's not to say you're not going to be bringing in clients now. Of course, don't get worried, anyone listening. It's just you're preparing yourself for what's ahead in the second half of the year in a way that it does not cause all that chaos and all that complexity when the time comes. You can leverage this period to get ready for it. Get your team around you, get your systems in place so things can be scalable, whether you're in a growth or scale stage.
Love it. This has been incredible. And I'm sure that our listeners are hitting replay and getting their notebooks, taking notes on everything that you've shared so that they can begin to implement. But I know that's not going to be sufficient in getting them to where they want to go. So Kim and Christa, how do people get in touch with you? How do they learn more? We'll drop the links to taking the quiz in the show notes for sure. How else do they follow you, get in touch with you, and learn more?
So for me, this is Kim. You can go to kimwoods.com. My website, we're creating beautiful places for you to land. There's a star strategy center that you can go and get all things forecast. We're putting reels and events and my podcast up there. If you're a podcast listener, go to your star path to success. And that is my podcast. The star map to success is my quiz. And any one of those ways you can follow me and you can start really understanding your own energy and how it aligns with what's going on in the stars. And so you can get your weekly, your monthly, or what's going on for you when I give tips about money and give tips about growth and give tips about hiring and all the things.
Great show. I love listening in. Christa, what about you?
Yeah. So if you head over to Lean Out Your Business Podcast or leanoutpodcast.com, that will take you to my podcast where I talk a lot about connecting your vision down to what you do day to day and surrounding yourself with the right support structure and systems to live that beautiful, rich, fulfilled life. And if you'd like to find me online, you can find me at leanoutmethod.com or strategicopsinstitute.com. So if you are a founder of the visionary side, go to Lean Out Method. That is really everything that you need to live your rich, fulfilled life. And if you are more of the operational thinker or an operational leader, that is where Strategic Ops Institute is everything you need to be able to successfully scale the businesses you support.
Thank you so much. This has been such a rich and enlightening conversation. And I don't know, I'm on fire. I can't wait to do more with you guys. That's it for now, my friends. Follow Kim Woods and Christa Grasso. Links will be below in show notes. Go forth and conquer. Stay aligned to your intuition. Make sure you have a plan that will get you to where you want to go. And Christa and Kim are your gals to help you get there. Thank you so much for being in, listener. If you loved this show, please leave us a rating and review. We so appreciate that, and it helps other listeners discover the show. That's it for now, my friends. See you next time.